Hey everyone, thanks again for joining us on another episode. I'm gonna think with this the pad. Uh, Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Voices for Voices TV show and podcast. I'm your host, founder of Voices for Voices, Justin Allen Hayes. Thank you for joining us. We are grateful to have you here, whether you're here in the United States or whether you are at any other point in another country across the world. We have surpassed over 70 countries, 700 cities. It's really remarkable, and we are gaining momentum as far as uh, having interest outside of the United States. So we uh, we thank you for doing that. If you haven't checked out our other episodes, again, we're uh, at least at the time of this filming, we've had at least 272 episodes that have dropped, and you can find us everywhere. Rumble, YouTube, all audio platforms near and far. And then if you're here in Northeast Ohio, you know how to find us on the television each week. This particular episode, we have invited uh, one of our one of our guests back because we have really only scratched the surface on uh, him as a person, him as a family man, him uh, just as a human being as we just navigate, this thing called life. And with that comes, ups and downs, all shapes and sizes, obstacles here, obstacles there. We zig and zag, uh, and I think all of us do that regardless of if we think we made it or not. So tonight, or this afternoon, depending on where you're at when you watch and view this particular episode, we are being joined by David Solomon. And what we're gonna look at focusing on for this particular show is his mother, Sapphira, and how mythical creatures around the world. I said mythical the first time, but I believe it's mythical creatures around the world as a whole. And David can definitely correct me. And so my understanding is that we're going to be talking about that, how mythical creatures around the world got its start, how it really manifested in his mother's mind, because we know that uh, we first think of ideas and thoughts, in our mind before they, turn into action. At least that's been my experience. Maybe you've had different experience, and so it's just important to kind of think of we're talking to audiences, viewers, listeners, a wide range of ages and ethnicities, and I think just being able to talk about, okay, well, how did this get its start? Like where did it even come from? So David, thank you again for joining us, and you can hit the ground running as we talk about mythical creatures around the world. Your mom Sapphira, and maybe bring us up to present day if we have enough time.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I really just wanted to talk about my mom's legacy because tomorrow is the 4th of July, and my mom was really big on folklore surrounding the 4th of July. Um, my mom actually is who taught me how to love folklore and mythology and to do stories. I grew up with my mom telling me stories that happened long ago whether that be a werewolf sighting or in Southern Oregon, we had vampire stories. And my mom's the one that kind of introduced me to folklore. And I think I was about, let's see, 5 at the time. No, 4. Um, when we went back to Virginia for hyperbaric oxygen, my mom and I were on a boat after treatment. It was the Trout Dell Lake. And she wanted to take me just on a boat ride to have a break from treatment. And we got stranded in the middle of the lake.
Mhm.
And we were stranded for about 24 hours.
Mm.
It
Wow.
was snowing. So uh, my mom would tell the story of the lake. And true enough, it actually had a monster in it. It actually started kicking the boat. Um, but I think that's where my mom's love for storytelling really grew, to tell mythology and folklore that matters. And she had a love for telling stories that made people better people once they heard them. Um, so about 2008, uh, my mom had just come from a surgery. I was really sick that year, and I actually missed about 6 months of school. And my mom would take walks with me once I got well, and every walk she would tell me a different folklore, and I would just process it and go, this could fit, this couldn't fit. And she would just come up with these wild ideas for stories and mythology and folklore. And then she started creating stories and TV shows and things from it. Um, about 2009, I contacted a Christian publisher with her because she wanted to tell her stories and we wanted to co-write and just really do all these really cool stories that had never been seen. So we did. And it was quite something, but those stories never got to be published due to the fact that we had to move in 2010. In 2011, my mom was diagnosed with non Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4 blood cancer. She had a tumor the size of a baseball. And in order to pass time, because people at church would make fun of her, she would sit in back. She would write. She would write these immaculate stories, Dragosaurus, and just all these Christian fantasy stories based on native folklore. And about Christmas, she she wrote one in particular and shared it with me, and told me the story behind it. And so I drew it for her, and it turned out to be a Christmas card. We didn't create Mythical yet, but we both saw the power of drawing a myth and passing it to people for hope in their own backyard. That was kind of cool. So finally, my mom, in 2012, March, um, she was healed of the blood cancer. It went into total permanent remission.
Mm.
And that was the moment where my mom said, let's do something. And I got tired of learning about the Greek gods and the Norse gods and all the gods in mythology. And I just wanted to know about Oregon. Honestly, I wanted to know what was there. I wanted to know what was out there, if there was something out there, and and what the mythology was out there of Oregon. How did we get there? And so my mom investigated and found some things. And so she created the first post on mythical creatures, and I drew it.
Hmm.
And it was based on Irish mythology, technically Celtic, and it tied to the Bible because mom always tied mythology back to the Bible. The Blue Men of the Mitch. They were mermen in Scotland who were blue skinned and could cause storms. But the mythology was they were fallen angels and their wings were burned and they were cast to the abyss, the bottom of the ocean. That's the folklore. So mythical creatures was born that day as a bit of a ministry and to show the world who God was through culture. And then it grew, and mom and I started creating TV pilots and books for it. And there would be times where my mom would come up with a plot over the years and would go, I think this would be better, and your idea sucks.
Mhm.
There would be those moments.
Yeah.
Um, but my mom would always be trying to come up with plots. There was one plot in particular that actually made it to publishing, and you know that as Melonheads.
Mm.
Melonheads was based on Connecticut and Ohio folklore, and she edited it, did her own twist in it, and it was really fun. And mom really investigated ocean folklore. So we went to Virginia Beach, and she would go to the beach and she would ask around all the people there if they've ever heard stories on the beach. And then she would gather that information, and that would be mythical creatures for that week. I learned from her. And then I said, okay, this could work. So we created mythical creatures as an empire to touch culture and countries and to be a voice and unite against division. So my mom made these stories that were stories that were told in those areas. Like every city on the Oregon coast, for example, she would have a story. And how she would have that story is she would go to the locals. She would just pull over and go to the shop and ask if there were any stories around here. And someone may go, "Oh, no, I don't believe in that." And then another might go, "I've heard a few things." And it was a hit or miss, but man, she gathered over what, 20,000 Oregon Coast stories alone.
Wow.
And those are all like mermaid sightings and things like that, but they're all from different walks of life. Some from tourists, hotels, police, fire, hospitals, local businesses. I mean, she didn't discriminate
Right, a
who
wide
showed
variety.
up.
Yeah.
And one day in San Antonio, I was uh, I was at a 24-hour fitness. Mom was doing a workout, and she said, we should ask if there's any folklore here."
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, right." So I asked the manager, and he goes, "Well, you know what? I was at the beach the other day and I heard something, and it spooked me and my wife." And that opened my eyes that no matter where you are, ask and you shall receive. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And if you're not looking for it, you ain't going to find it. And so, how Mythical is ran is I learned to collect folklore from people. In fact, I learned what the term folklore is. I'll give you an example. If I tell you that there is a blue monkey in my house and we post it and it's shared, then the next blog is going to take that and say there was a blue ape, still monkey, but it's an ape.
Mm.
And then the next person is going to hear that, tell their friend there was a blue cat. Now it's still a myth, it's still folklore, but it's alive, it's breathing. Folklore always changes. I'll give you another example. People say the United States doesn't have folklore, but it could be far from the truth. We have too much folklore. Here's how. My mom broke it down into three parts: aliens in Roswell, New Mexico, and UFOs. We don't consider that folklore. But what is folklore? Folklore is a myth that cannot be explained, a creature or an entity of a sighting of something extraordinary beyond the human eye. Whether fairy, mermaid, centaur, satyr, harpy, elf, gnome, it doesn't matter. Folklore doesn't discriminate. What is an alien? An alien is something unknown that apparently comes from another galaxy, but there is no evidence to support that. Well, what do aliens do? Well, according to modern day, they abduct people. Well, what do fairies do? Well, according to before aliens, right before aliens, for thousands of years, they abduct people. But wait a second. But the aliens weren't there before Roswell. Well, according to folklore, they were. We just didn't call them aliens. We called them fairies. And so when I travel to a new town or a city like mom, did, I always look at the folklore and I'll always look at three things. Is there alien sightings? Hmm. Are there mermaid sightings? Hmm. Are there werewolf, fairy, or vampire sightings? Those are the three I'll look at first. Usually you're going to get 3 out of 3. Sometimes you get lucky and get 7.
Oh.
Um, in big towns like Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, San Francisco, cities on the ocean, Miami, you will always find stories because people like to talk
Mm.
and I like to listen. And so I love to gather these stories and share them. And not only that, but I've actually gotten on quite a few authors, including Holly Beck and Cassandra Clare, to represent the original folklore the way that person saw it or perceived. Because remember, folklore changes, but you also have to respect what that person saw or went through. Now, in the United States, there is a fourth dimension to folklore, and that is the spiritual. Now, I don't judge, but there's some truth to it that I've seen where there are the demonic that are considered in folklore. It's very rare that you will catch that, but you do catch that, particularly in Oregon. I'm referring to Beaverton, Oregon, Halloween 2008. I contacted the couple who posted on it on Reddit, out of all places. There was a demon that they found in their home.
Mm.
And their home address is 6666, and I won't reveal the street, but that was interesting. And so, in a big metropolis like Portland, that area, you're going to find demonic. If you're in Cleveland or kind of in a rundown town like Baltimore, you're going to find demonic. Um, I was talking to someone earlier, great person, like she's really on fire with her folklore and really knows what she's talking about. And there is a belief about what's called the Marine Kingdom. Marine Kingdom are water spirits that some Christians believe can possess humans and or have influence. Now, Christianity spreads belief that fairies are demonic, mermaids are demonic, all these things are demonic. It depends on who you ask, it depends on what state you're in or city, then those things are true to that culture. So it doesn't matter about my personal belief, I portray it according to that culture. Personally, I have tied my own Native American mythology of my tribe to the Bible. And actually found that mermaids are in the Bible in more places than one. I also discovered that, like, no matter where you are in the world, everything reverts back to the Bible. So that's why mythical creatures around the world was created by my mom. So then my mom had a vision. My mom wanted to change the way things were done. So she wanted a spinoff for this country and a spinoff for that city so that each spinoff would touch each place in a unique way. Give me an example. If Baltimore is poverty, then our character would be poor and they would be bullied by the rich. If we're in Maryland on the coast and our family is rich, then the person would be bullied because there are poor people around them. And you would show a story of diversity, but you would also show being humble with your money and greed. And so mommy had all these stories planned out for every city, every town, every beach, and we still do. And no matter where we would go, there would always be folklore, and it's true. No matter where you go, there's always a myth. Not one place in the world is there not a myth. Even if you're on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, there's going to be a myth. If you're on an airplane, there's going to be a myth. If you're in your home, trust me, people were there before you. And we call them ghosts. Again, I I view ghost as a culture belief because I found the meaning behind the word ghost, and people will disagree all day long, and that's not what I'm about. But I go out of my way to try and stay away from that. And so did my mom because of biblical reasons. That isn't to say I have a ghost here and there. There are ghosts in the Bible, but it's not very clear why they're there. Um, so anything that I do or my mom, we try to back it up in the Bible. And that's why Mythical Creatures was created, to be a platform for people to learn about these cool myths and not having to pick up a Percy Jackson book or Harry Potter. The same thing with Greek mythology, but have a myth right in the middle of your backyard. That's why Mythical Creatures around the world is created. And my mom had a love for collecting these stories and sharing them as a storyteller and pass it on to me. And so that's what I do to this day.
Mm. Yeah, it's an amazing story how mythical creatures around the world got its start, how um, investigative journaling or just talking to people, asking questions, and um, it it is a little bit of a parallel, but uh, yeah, I think about the TV show Murder She Wrote. You know, you have Jessica Fletcher, or any of these, shows where, these people are in these towns and they get involved for one reason or another, and and then they're looked at as uh, an expert because uh, they talk, but then they also listen. And I think in our day and age, listening is it's just one of those skills that a lot of us, we and I mean I'm guilty of this as I'm with all the shows we have and everything, wanting to share information and topics and that but sometimes we get kind of like media crazed. I don't know. I'm not using the right words. But any event, that we can learn a lot from those who are listeners, and we can, uh, yeah, I mean, not just learn, but be able to feel enriched after we talk or listen to somebody instead of, sharing our information. And there are times where, yeah, we want to share, we want to talk through. But then there's also times to listen. And I think it's an acquired sense, if we can call it that, of uh, being okay to sit or stand and listen to somebody talk, whether how interesting or whether how uninteresting what they're talking about. And so uh, to bring that, listening ear that your mom had and pass that down to you, still to this day, of, you're very much a investigative of, like you said, talking to this group or that group, and wanting to represent the folklore as it was seen or heard, uh, and not put your spin on it, because that'd be something that's easy to do, but you keep it authentic back to that person or back to that organization or back to that country or city or state or beach or what have you. And I think it just tells us, and it teaches us this, lessons of, the answer is always no if we don't ask, and we're not going to learn anything other than what we know or what we think, if we're not going to take time to listen to others. And that's what I draw from, uh, just the process of how mythical creatures around the world started with your mom, and then having you, uh, you know continue on that journey of, taking that torch uh, forward, and continuing those important traits that your mom had while she was living on Earth. And uh, I I I know that she's proud of you, and you- she's sitting here talking to us today, that she would probably most likely say, like, wow, like, that's that's what I intended mythical creatures around the world to be. And then to kind of see and say, yeah, that's my son. And kind of, just have that smile, that nod, give a hug and kiss, and that's very important. And I think it's a big part of why you do what you do and have done what you have done, uh, is because there's passion there. A it's not just a task or a project. You want to bring that project, that folklore, as close as humanly possible to the people, the organizations, the individuals that saw it, that heard it. And I think that we all can learn a lot, whether we write folklore, whether we read folklore, whether we've seen something, whether we've heard something. I think we can all apply, uh, that listening ear of, we're going to learn something when we take the time to listen. That the world's not all about us as individuals. It's, about humanity, about God, and all those elements really put together. And so I gather that's another big reason of why mythical creatures around the world have been and continues to be so popular, not just with people and organizations in the United States, but all across the world. So thank you for sharing that, David. We're less than a minute away from Zoom
You're welcome.
kind of cutting out. So we want to also thank our viewers, our listeners for tuning in this time and every time. And check out other episodes that we have. We have over 270 other episodes. And we thank you for tuning in wherever you're at, watching, listening. And until next time, please be a voice for you or somebody in need. We'll see you next time.